Hello, my amazing viewers. Please, let's listen to what Mr. Bukati said about the bandit issue. Serious, they might actually have a point here, so listen to him.
You are a scholar. You've researched very in-depthly about this element. What do we know about these? Because I want us to identify them and then also look whether or not the suggestion of Governor Yerima is tried or not in the sense of negotiating with them. Whether we can just throw them the carrot or just use the stick and clear them out. Like Governor El-Rufai has said, that we should go to the bushes and just clear them out. What do we know of them?
I mean, look, Sean, like you said, I have researched this issue of bandits as well as other crises very well. And I was the executive producer in the Bandit Warlords of Zamfara, the investigative video or documentary that was released by BBC Africa last year, which was, made by Yusuf Anka. I was the executive producer on that. And in that process, I got to understand very well what is motivating the bandits and their activities. If we looked at it historically, we could say the bandits in Zamfara did have some socio-economic grievances at the time they started, whether it's lack of access to grazing land or marginalization or perceived marginalization and stuff like that. But we know that over the past 8 years or so, these elements have transitioned from people who had some socio-economic or political grievances into full-blown criminals who attacked innocent individuals, killed thousands and thousands of Nigerians, and destroyed hundreds of villages using terroristic methods. And if you looked at the Terrorism Prevention Act in Nigeria, what they did is terrorism, and that's why the federal government sought a declaration from the Federal High Court, and the Federal High Court declared them terrorists. And therefore, we are talking about terrorists. Let's stop even calling them bandits. They are terrorists. Maybe we'll only call them bandits because there are many different terrorist groups in Nigeria. Now, Senator Sani Yerima Bakura is a respected figure in northern Nigeria and in Zamfara State in particular. He was a governor, he was senator, and he has represented his people in different forums. So we cannot say he is coming to this from a position of ignorance. But what we can say for sure is that he is not coming to this as a position of an expert or an analyst, because if he was an expert or an analyst, he wouldn't call for negotiation or for dialogue, because dialogue or negotiation implies sitting, around the table and conversing with the bandits or the terrorists and giving them something in order to get something from them. It's like a compromise, and that's not how to deal with them. The way to deal with them is to start with the stick, because Yerima suggests that we start with the carrot, give them an opportunity to defect or to repent. If they don't, then go all in with the military effort. We have tried that before. It did not work. What you need to do is to go hard on the military side of things, and then after you have used enough military power on them, you may then open the door, not for negotiation, but for amnesty, because you don't negotiate with terrorists, you don't negotiate with criminals. What you do is to allow those of them who want to repent to lay off their arms and turn themselves into authorities. And then you profile them, and you consult community members, you consult experts, you consult our security agencies, and then you now decide whether to prosecute them or to follow the procedure laid down by experts to demobilize them properly, rehabilitate them, and then reintegrate them back to communities. That's the process. It is not about negotiation. It is not about dialogue. It is a question of using military force against them for them to know that Nigeria has the might to crush them, and then you allow them to defect and repent and turn themselves into authorities if they want to.
All right. Now, we have a scholar in the building, and we have a man who's used his stick properly on the field. So we'll be getting a mix of that. Very quality personalities discussing this issue on the program tonight. But Mr. Bukati, please help us. Can we say for sure that we know these bandits, the terrorists like you call them? Because, I mean, it's good to identify them as bandits. So when we're talking about the terrorists in the northeastern region of the country, we call them Boko Haram. And there are those also who are carrying arms and violent attacks on Nigerians in some part of the country. So it's good to distinguish, at least for this, for the sake of this discussion. Now, can we say we know these bandits?
Yes, we know them, and Zamfara state politicians know them. The federal government and our intelligence agencies know them. They know their leaders. For example, Ado Aleru was someone who was tracked by BBC Africa and was interviewed on camera. Everyone saw the bandit warlords of Zamfara. We have people like, Turji. Bello Turji is a renowned personality in northwestern Nigeria because of his terroristic acts. And there are a host of them. You could say there are many.
Dogo Gudali, Dogo Gide, Dogo Gudali.
There are just countless. Dogo Gide is someone whose name we know, whose voice we know, who is on camera. And there are a host of others like Sani Dangote, Gajere. There are many of them, like I said. And the leaders in particular are identifiable. And once you arrest them or you track them down, you are able to track their group. They are not even hiding their faces anymore. They are ringing into media agencies to give interviews. They are releasing videos to demand for ransom. They are threatening people on camera, on audio, and therefore we cannot claim that we don't know them. And in particular, Zamfara politicians who have negotiated with them know them. That's why they gave them amnesty. Katsina State politicians know them because they have negotiated with them, with some of them in the past. And the federal government should know them because our intelligence agencies have their names, they have their faces. And like I said, the method that they have used is terroristic. And like the group captain has said, if someone attacks innocent civilians with impunity in horrific attacks, you don't then treat them as people who have socio-economic or political grievances like, insurgents or rebel groups who generally respected laws and did not attack civilians.
You are one person that told me on this program that there are dimensions into what some of these terrorists are now deploying. Technology, using Turaya, satellite telephones, and it's a bit difficult to be able to track that. They are in fact using drones to remotely now carry out their attacks. That means that there's some kind of funding and sophistication coming into play. Those, and I'd like to quickly extract this from you quickly, and it's the fact that do we have what it takes to track these people? Do we have the satellite enablement? Do we have the remote tracking enablement, the digital and the latest technology to be able to track these people? That is on one hand quickly, because that's going to lead me to my next question.
No, the first point I will make, Sean, is that we should not deceive ourselves that it is easy to track and to fight and to defeat them. If it was easy, past governments would have succeeded in doing that. But what I can tell you for sure is that it is not impossible to track them. Because, for example, we know that the Nigerian security and intelligence agencies are capable of tracking people using their SIM cards. And we know that these bandits are using SIM cards. In the bush, they call parents, they negotiate with parents for weeks, and we know that parents have reported them. We know that school proprietors have reported them and their phone numbers, but those phone numbers that have been used for months, sometimes for years, have never been tracked and them arrested. Secondly, everyone in Zamfara knows the bush where these bandits are hiding. Everyone in Katsina knows the bush, the area where these bandits are hiding. And therefore, we should understand that, of course, they are hiding in jungles. Of course, they are trying to evade security agencies, but it is not impossible for us to deploy technology and to use human intelligence in order to track them and to crush them. It is not impossible. They are not, living in the sky or somewhere where they can disappear. They are living in the jungle where people know, people in Zamfara can point you one by one, every bush, every area where the bandits are lurking. People in Kaduna can show you that, and people in Sokoto and Katsina can also show you that. So it is just a matter of using basic intelligence. Where is the intelligence our security and law enforcement agencies are using to track SIM cards of people who, who say negative, who criticize politicians? For example, we know of a boy who criticized the wife of the former president, and he was tracked to his university and was maltreated by our security and law enforcement agencies. And if they can use that, they can use people's SIM card to track them. They can use the SIM card bandits are using to negotiate with parents and proprietors of schools and churches and mosques in order to track them and to bring them to book. Right. But they can also use human intelligence. They can use their air power, the jets we have bought in order to conduct surveillance and in order to do recognizance
Bulama,
and to identify where they are.
We're due for a break, and I'd like to bring back Group Captain Sadiq into this because it has come to where we need to extract and beg him for his expertise in his areas. Quickly, if you can tell us, some of these bandit elements, we understand and we know and we heard that the Boko Haram had infiltrated them. And they are using them to carry out their attacks in parts of the northwestern region of the country. And in fact, that they are now multi-faced, meaning that they are not just one group, they are different groups, all scattered around. The ones operating in parts of Sokoto, the ones operating in Plateau, the ones in fact, we do understand that, in fact, some of them are even aliens. They are not Nigerians. So, I mean, how easy do you want to coordinate or identify these people? Because the first step to be able to tackle this is to identify who you are fighting against, isn't it?
No, sure. And I mean, you are right that there have been elements of bandits that have been infiltrated by Boko Haram. Of course, there were bandit elements that claim to have relationships with Boko Haram, or in whose case Boko Haram claimed to have the relationship with them that later we found out that it was just a marriage of convenience for a particular period of time, and that did not continue. But one bandit in particular, Dogojide, himself claims to be fighting the kind of war Boko Haram is fighting, and he claims to have a relationship with Al-Qaeda. He says his relationship has now transcended Shekau and that he has a relationship with Al-Qaeda. And we know that he's operating in Zamfara, in Katsina, and some other areas of the Northwest. But there is also evidence, some evidence that Al-Qaeda fighters, ISIS fighters from the Sahel have been able to carry out attacks in the Northwest, including in places like Sokoto, where they have claimed attacks in the year 2019, for example. And then we know that there are Boko Haram cells. These are not bandits infiltrated by Boko Haram. These are Boko Haram cells resident in Zamfara. For example, we know that Ansaru has a cell in Zamfara. We know Ansaru has a cell in Kaduna and in Nasarawa State. But also the ISIS allied faction of Boko Haram, ISWAP, has claims to have a cell in Kogi State, and it is from Kogi State that they are launching some of the attacks in Kogi, the attack we saw in Oshun and other places. And so there are bandit elements, bandit terrorists in the Northwest. There are Boko Haram faction of Ansaru who are allied to Al-Qaeda, and there are Boko Haram elements of who are allied to the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, that's ISIS, which calls itself locally as ISWAP. But we also then have bandit elements like Dogojide, who claim to have some relationship with the extremist groups. It is important to identify them, but when it comes to military effort, Sheun, what the people of the Northwest and the North Central want is to live in peace. And therefore, it is for the federal government to use the might it has on all of them, because all of them are a threat to Nigeria. They want to destroy Nigeria, and we should destroy them as soon as we can. All right.
I mean, there's nothing that gives me more joy than destroy those who want to destroy this country. I mean, in terms of these violent elements, they've troubled our people, killed innocent Nigerians, messed up our economy, turned our country into a place that people don't want to visit. We need to clear them out.